We have a terrific task ahead of us. We have a shattered world around us, and we must help to rebuild it.
Сегодня еще раз обращаюсь ко всем гражданам России.
The President of the United States.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Hello and welcome to episode 8 of Seats of Power. Now it's starting to get difficult to count. My name is Jake Smith. As usual, I'm hosting with Kyle Vella and John Paul Vella. How are you guys, first of all? Is everything okay?
Everything's fine.
Not in the UK, it seems.
Oh.
That was planned 5 seconds ago.
Without telling us.
I think what is obvious now is that we're going to talk about the UK, obviously, today. There's many things to talk about. Mm-hmm. And quite frankly, I don't think 1 hour suffices, but we shall try our best. So there's, apart from, the abysmal ratings of Keir Starmer as the Prime Minister and the rise of Nigel Farage as leader of the Reform Party. You have sayings of Andrew Tate wanting to run as Prime Minister. So much is going on. How would you guys, in 3 words, describe the situation politically in the UK? I know it's tricky, but...
3 words is a bit little.
It's evil.
It's very, very bad.
That's true, yeah.
There are some... No, there aren't really any good things in Parliament right now, in the House of Commons especially. Don't know what JP thinks.
It's a mess. I mean...
Yeah, that's 3 words. Well done.
Yeah. you had the Labour Party taking power a few months ago, and they have already tanked in the polls. I mean, from a certain point of view, Keir Starmer has not really been given a chance to actually do anything.
Yeah, that is an argument.
He has just been elected, but at the same time, it's abnormal to see him tank so hard in the polls a few months after being elected.
Well, I don't think he just hasn't had the chance to do anything. I think with the little time he's had so far, he's done so much and done so much damage as well that you can see it as sort of... For me, it's like he's been in Parliament for a while now, but he hasn't been. I don't know how long.
I was never partial to Keir Starmer myself. Not that I knew a lot from him, and I must say I have bias. I'm not particularly a fan of the Labour Party either, but I expected something. The bar is so low at this point in the UK. I feel from people's judgment of government in general, I think is horrible because they had the Tories for I don't know how many years. They didn't really like them, but the Labour Party was shattered, so they kept winning, essentially. Similar to the situation in Malta, just flipped.
Yeah, I guess.
And now you have the Labour Party who took power, and you see all the approval ratings go haywire. Would it be a case of failed promises or false promises? Is it a case of there was already a crisis and now people are just blaming the current administration? What do you guys think?
It's partly false promises, partly just doing stuff that he never even mentioned. Mm-hmm. For example, the stuff with, how can I say it? The incarcerating of online speech.
Yes,
for example.
That's one thing. I mean, it has been going on for...
It's been going on.
Quite a long time. I mean, I think all of us have seen the video from that comedian. He's a Russian UK comedian, Konstantin Kisin. I don't know if you know about him.
I don't know.
He's quite famous. He hosts trigonometry podcasts. And in 2019 or 2020, he had an interview where he kind of explained essentially to this interviewer, he kind of tricked him. And he asked him, do you know how many people were arrested or incarcerated for things they said online in the UK in 2018? And the number was, I think, more in the thousands, 3,000 or something like that. But in the same year, in Russia, there was about 300 people incarcerated for things they said on social media. Now, this is not to say necessarily that Russia is a great place to live, obviously, but when you put it like that, it puts things into perspective. I mean, this is the UK we're talking about in 2018.
Yeah, freedom of speech is an issue, especially nowadays as well. In fact, on Twitter, the government themselves posted, think before you post. Mm-hmm. They posted a tweet, or even Instagram posted on all socials, think before you post is what they said after they had incarcerated quite a few people, which I guess I get why, maybe, but I don't really agree with it. Especially the whole point of this radio show is to promote free speech as well.
Well, yeah, yes.
So
That's
obviously,
the main point of this,
Yeah.
of what we're doing. But apart from that, do you think maybe it's a consequence of the UK not having a stable constitution that maybe kind of results in frequent transgressions against free speech?
I don't think so, because I don't know what you think about this, JP.
Well, I mean, when it comes to free speech, the UK, it suffers from the very same issues that most Western countries suffer. And that's the question that, are you going to tolerate intolerance, practically?
Yeah.
So there's this constant paradox of people saying, hey, listen, we cannot have certain discourse because it threatens, democratic values. But that's a paradox in and of itself because, well, free speech and, allowing people to say what they think is essentially one of the main, if not the main,
in my opinion, the
pillar
main.
of democracy.
Yeah, exactly. So when again you put it into perspective, it's the UK we're talking about, not Cuba or Russia or China. I mean, things start to look much different now. Obviously, apart from that issue, which is a major issue in and of itself, you have the issue of a lot of people will point to a lot of multiculturalism in the UK, which has bred to a lot of violence and intolerance, as you said. You have Muslim populations which are getting rather large, protesting and rioting on the street. You have other demographics and things like that. And partially, I think maybe you would agree with me that going back 8 years, Brexit referendum happens. That might have been fueled due to those not fears but concerns about multiculturalism and things like that.
I could agree with. I don't fully agree with you, because I think it's important to keep in mind as well that the UK in general, it has always been turbulent democratically. I mean, in terms of politics, it's always been turbulent. I don't think there's ever been an age really where there hasn't been anything. For example, you had, apart from the troubles in Ireland in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, you had the problems with the EU, for example, with Thatcher as well. More recent years, you had Brexit as well. So obviously, both EU related. Sorry about my bias for European. That's what I study. And before that, you had the wars, and you had other, the Great Depression, for example, stuff like that, which all affected politics in the UK. I don't think it's ever been stable. So to say now it's gone out of control, I think it's not really. I don't think you can pinpoint what the reason was.
No, yeah, that's a fair point. Yeah, there's not one singular cause that you can look at and say,
exactly.
This is the catalyst, because there's so many instances of things that are just going wrong and just leading to bad consequences all around the UK.
And
that's,
immigration has been a recurring theme in the UK as well. It's always been an issue. Even for Brexit was the main thing. But like I just said, I don't think there's not really, like you said, I agree with you, there's not really one thing that can be seen as a cause for all this.
No, I agree with you, because, I mean, ultimately, let's take it purely logically, right? Who are the ideologically the people who are going to be most anti-immigration? You're going to look at nationalist kind of views, those types of people. And you had those ideas supposedly represented in the House of Commons for, I don't know, how long were the Tories in power? Since Blair, right? Since after Blair, I mean.
Yeah.
Right, so what, 10, 15 years? Something like that?
I think more, but yeah.
Point is, the people in government were the people who were supposedly representing those, ideals of nationalism and sort of anti-immigration, yet literally the opposite of whatever you think policies would come from that has occurred. So you're not just looking at, multiculturalism, you're looking at incompetence in government, extreme incompetence that has resulted in more and more crises.
I mean, have you ever seen the videos of the House of Commons when they meet?
Oh yeah,
it's absolute chaos.
I love to watch them.
That's what I was going to say. If the UK political scene is nothing, and this is obviously from an outside perspective, but it's really entertaining.
It is very entertaining.
For example, I said I'd mention her, Suella Braverman.
Yeah.
She recently went on, I don't know, it was a radio show or something, and she said that Italy put up the border between got messed up in my words. Italy put up their border with Turkey, and they armed their border, is what she said. Now, if you see a map, okay, if you see a map, there's quite some distance between Italy and Turkey. and she's a member of parliament in the UK, mind you, for the Conservatives, I believe. Yeah, for the Conservatives. So it goes to show the level of competence in the UK.
Yes, I mean the House of Commons is not lost on intelligent people. I would go as far to say it's very intelligent, the most intelligent of the intelligent in the House of Commons, I would say.
There are good politicians.
No, obviously. I mean,
We're just having fun right now.
I mean, the House of Commons has how many members total? Like about less than 500 or something like that.
It's
650.
Yeah, that's true.
650.
I thought it was less actually, but okay. Point is, obviously there are going to be some good apples in there, but there's a lot of bad apples as well.
yeah.
Now, obviously the UK has been Tories or Labour for the longest time. Now you have the emergence of Nigel Farage with Reform Party UK. You have George Galloway, who won a constituency somewhere in the north of England. I don't know exactly where, but he's heading the Workers' Party of Great Britain. And you're kind of seeing the similar pattern that you're seeing in a lot of countries in democracies around Europe, where it's a rejection of the two-party system, and you're kind of reinvigorating to introduce more parties. Now, I know in the UK there was the Liberal Democrats, for example, but
They're still there.
two-party. When I'm saying two-party systems, I'm saying there's two parties dominating.
Yeah.
Now, Nigel Farage is I would say, controversial figure. Or at least was definitely a controversial figure. Maybe he's a bit less now. I wouldn't know.
That's debatable, yeah.
But let's say
okay, sure.
it's beside the point, right? So the party recently overtook in members the Conservative Party. So obviously an election hasn't happened yet since that. So you can't really say they're the new Conservative Party. But are we headed there, or are they headed there? Would you say?
Well, ultimately it depends on, because a big factor in this is the political system of the UK.
Yeah.
It's first past the post.
Yeah.
And it depends on how many constituencies you win ultimately as well. So Reform got a couple million votes, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. 4 million. Yeah, they got more than some parties, but they got less. They got more than the Liberal Democrats, but Liberal Democrats got like 70.
I'll give you the numbers now. So the Reform UK got over 4 million votes, which is 14% of the electorate, but they only got 5 seats,
Yeah, 5.
which amounts to 0.8% of parliament. On the other hand, the Liberal Democrats got 3 million votes, 3.5 million, which amounts to 12.2%, and they got 11.1% of the seats. When you look at the two main parties, you have the Conservatives getting 6 million, 6.8, which is 23% of the total vote and 18.6% of the seats, while the Labour Party got 9.7 million, which is 32% of the total vote, but 63% of the seats in Parliament.
That's something interesting as well about first past the post as a system. I don't like it at all.
I don't like that. As well.
Because what happens is you get a minority government almost 9 times out of 10.
Yeah.
It is what happened. Most people didn't vote Labour, if you count up the numbers, but they won more constituencies, so they got elected, they got the most seats. So in terms of it, also Farage and Reform UK getting in power, I think it's still a way to go, because ultimately they need to win more constituencies.
It's difficult, obviously, but at the same time, you see how
It
Labour is
could-
doing.
Yeah, it could happen.
For Labour to lose the constituencies, I think it's a rather likely outcome. Now, obviously, the election.
I don't agree on that, actually.
I don't think they'd lose the
No,
constituencies.
because-
They'd lose votes, not
all the
I
constituencies.
think they would actually gain more constituencies because they're still running as a singular bloc, while the right wing is going to have their votes split between Reform and the Conservative Party. So in a first past the post system, even if they get 20% of the vote, but their opponents get less, they'll still win.
Yeah.
Well, it depends on the Conservative Party then, on what they keep doing until the election, because I don't necessarily, I wouldn't say they're gaining support, particularly.
No, the Conservatives are losing support. The only major party which is actually gaining support is Reform UK.
Yeah.
But even then, they're not really a strong voice because, as we said, they have 5 seats in Parliament.
No, but
can't really do
obviously,
much with that.
I'm talking about the next election. I'm not necessarily talking about who has power now, because that's somewhat irrelevant, realistically, because as we've seen for 20 years, no matter who was in power, they're just incompetent. Incredibly incompetent. I mean, even if you go back to the last Labour, administration before the Tories, Still not a big fan for many reasons, that you can mention. But regardless of that, I think, or at least in my opinion, which is limited, I would say that probably Reform is either going to become the biggest party in the UK in the coming 5 to 10 years. I think that's a pretty safe bet, I think.
I don't know. It depends on what Farage does, because he's very unpredictable as
Yeah,
well.
that's the thing
So
with
that's why I
Farage.
don't really.
But I think
about
he's
it.
doing a very good move by not kind of like taking the endorsement, or not really taking the endorsement, but kind of rejecting Tommy Robinson.
Yeah.
You know who Tommy Robinson is? I'm assuming you're familiar.
Not
No,
really.
okay. So Tommy Robinson was this guy who posted a bunch of YouTube videos and documentaries, and tweets and things like that are viewed sometimes Islamophobically, right?
Okay.
Now, a lot of people on the right are like saying it's not Islamophobic. He's just pointing out facts, and then there's other people like Farage who say, look, whether or not he's pointing out facts, what he says and how he says it is toxic, and we don't want someone like that in our party.
Okay.
Now, when it comes to that, for example, I would say Nigel Farage is actually in the right, because I think someone like Tommy Robinson, whether or not he brings up valid points, which I think he actually does at times.
He damage your party.
At times, yeah, he damaged your reputation and your party. So in that respect, I think Farage is doing something well. But at the same time, you have even the Elon Musk factor in this case, which is kind of insane to think about. But I mean, the guy will fund parties. He will fund Reform UK if he thinks he should. And there was discussions that they were going to do it, but now he's kind of taking an anti-Nigel stance because Nigel doesn't want to accept Tommy Robinson into the party. So there's that clash as well. And as you guys have said, obviously the situation is so turbulent. It can change at any moment. There could be new people coming in every second. So there's that issue, obviously.
And there's also the issue, which is something which, because obviously the UK isn't just one country. There's England, Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland. So you have, for example, parties like the Scottish National Party, and there's, I don't know how to say it, I'll butcher this, Plaid Cymru, who always gain seats, obviously, because the Scottish National Party is Scottish, so every Scottish person will vote for them, or most at least. And then you have the issue with Sinn Féin, if you know what Sinn Féin is.
As the Irish?
It's the Northern Irish Party, and they always get seats. They always get like 6, 7, 8 seats, but they always abstain from it, from the Westminster and from the House of Commons every single time.
Northern Irish. I mean, they're the Republicans. They want to unite Northern Ireland with Southern Ireland.
Wait, but they're the representatives of.
Even that's interesting, because they got
They get millions.
0.7% of the vote, but because of their regionalism in Northern Ireland, they got 7 seats.
Yeah, that's why they always get seats, but they always abstain from them though. So.
It's a party with
protest.
200,000 votes who has more seats than Reform UK.
Yeah,
And that's the show
because
probably why
they
it makes
win.
no sense.
They win more constituencies in Ireland, so that's why I'm not sure about Reform gaining. They will gain more support, but the system and their leader Farage as well, they are so unpredictable. And Farage isn't stupid. I don't really necessarily like everything he says, especially when it comes to Brexit. But he's not stupid. He knows what he.
No, I
needs
think
to do.
Farage is ultimately he's a statesman. The guy's
Yes.
very smart.
Yes.
Whether you like him or not, or whether you think it's controversial or prejudiced or whatever, it doesn't matter. The guy's clearly smart. I mean, he's not some guy you pick up off the street and think he's stupid. He isn't. At the same time, obviously, even if he got to power, then he's obviously like almost held back, because there's again the British political system is complicated to get around. I mean, you can't really pass laws if you have a majority in government, but you really rarely get a majority in government due to the system how it's built.
Exactly.
So, it's a bit tough. Like, let's say Farage wants to protect free speech, to amend the law or include a law that kind of does that, you need a majority of seats. And in the UK political system, unless they're by far and away the most popular party, that's not really going to happen.
No, obviously not.
So,
The system works against him, and obviously he's called for it as well. He's always said that the system isn't friendly for them. I don't know if he said it when he was with UKIP, but
probably.
I don't remember, or I haven't seen it. But he said sometime last year that the current system, it's unfair. And obviously he'll say it because he got lots of votes and not a lot of constituencies.
But no, okay. So now then there's this also another aspect. So you have two main parties and reform kind of shooting upwards. At the same time, you have George Galloway leading the Great Britain Workers' Party. Now, it's not as big as reform for sure, but could there be a case where both the Labour and the Tories get kind of replaced by reform and the Workers' Party? Is that
Don't think so. They're too strong and they're too sort of how can I say it? They've been there already. They've been present for so long. I can see why you're saying that because it's changing sort of.
But I'm saying that specifically because look, I couldn't give a percentage, but how many people in whatever democracy you're talking about, but how many people would need to see an example of a third party candidate winning before they realize that third party candidates can win to vote for them? Point I'm making?
I get you, and I don't agree with you, but still, I don't think that because ultimately people will vote for what's familiar to them and what's best for them and what will fill their pockets up most.
Mm-hmm.
This is everywhere, not just in the UK, even in Malta. It's the same thing, and we have the same issue in Malta as well. So I don't think that really there'll be a strong sentiment to vote for reform throughout, as strong as maybe you're saying. That they will increase, but I don't think they'd increase as much to replace.
Next election is scheduled for 2027, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm not sure.
You can fact check me on that, but I believe it's 2027. So there's
2029.
2029.
Because it's
29,
5 years,
yeah.
2024.
I mean, action was this year.
2024. Last
Well,
year.
last year.
Last year.
I saw some tweet I got wrong, Mela.
Last
My
year.
mistake.
5 years.
So
There is time.
okay, so there's 4 years, 5 years.
4.5.
I'm getting confused. Anyway,
4.5
there's
years.
there's plenty of time for things to happen, and things to
Yes,
go
and-
predictably different than what you can predict now. So
And with the way Starmer's leading the country now, it's not
I mean that petition.
the petition. Yeah,
Has it been discussed already, or I don't think so.
I don't think so.
It got like 3 million signatures,
Over.
which is how much over the threshold needed to be discussed in
I think it was
Parliament.
a couple 100,000, if I'm not mistaken, to be discussed.
Yeah, like 100.
I don't know the
100,000.
number
I believe it's
exactly.
100,000, but I could be wrong. But anyway, point is, it clearly overthrew that completely to 3 million signatures.
It's
So people clearly aren't happy with the UK situation.
regarding the numbers, it's at 10,000 signatures or petition gets a response from the government, and at 100,000,
Yeah.
it's considered for debate in Parliament.
It's considered.
It's considered. It doesn't say that it will be, just considered.
Also, so it actually can not be discussed at some point.
Well,
no point.
the wording here is will be considered, so they can just ignore it.
I mean, that's hilarious.
Well, this week they aren't speaking about it in the House of Commons because today they're just questions for the Secretary of State for Innovation, Peter Kyle.
Yeah.
Prime Minister's questions.
So they clarify. They say petitions which reach 100,000 signatures are almost always debated, but we may decide not to put a petition forward for debate if the issue has already been debated or there's a debate scheduled for the near future. And I mean, in this case, I think that the election has been fairly recent. That you
Yeah,
can
that's the
say
thing, it's not
that
gonna
it
be
has
debated.
been debated
Yeah.
recently.
It's not going to be debated. I don't think anytime soon, probably. But point that's kind of irrelevant because whether or not it's debated, the petition is clear in the message that it's sending that there's 3 million people in the UK that are unhappy, and that they're so unhappy that they wish to have another election. I mean, that's you're not talking about a few people. You're talking about 3 million. I mean, that's quite a large number of people.
Technically,
Percentage-wise, obviously not.
because
but
like
I'm talking about if the threshold is 100,000 for discussion in Parliament,
yes, but you're forgetting the fact that like 6.8 million have been taken for granted that they're against the government because they voted conservative.
yeah, and
Another 4 million voted reform. So I mean,
Yeah,
obviously,
I think if you count up the numbers, most people didn't. There were more people that didn't vote for Labour than did.
so
It's a minority government, technically, with the number of votes.
Yeah,
but with the number of
77
seats. Yeah.
Wait.
They got
No, no.
33% of the votes.
67% of the country voted against the current government. So
Yeah, that's the issue with first past the post.
You
It's
know,
never
I don't
it's
like
never representative. It's never fully representative. Not none now. No democracy is fully perfect and
Yeah.
fully representative. But first past the post isn't really the way forward, in my opinion.
And it's even worse because it's a parliamentary supreme country, because it's the parliament that rules, the laws. So it makes it even more complicated.
I mean, there's the House of Lords.
House of Lords, yeah, really
Yes,
is the
but
legislative.
point is like it's
Yeah, I got you.
you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, they elect the House of Parliament. The House of
Yeah,
Lords.
exactly. Now, there's obviously another scenario which is, in my opinion, very far fetched. That someone, by the name of Andrew Tate, he ends up running as prime minister, as he said recently, and he says he's being serious. Now I don't know that he's gonna run as for prime minister, and he's set up the Bruv party. He's called it.
What?
Yes.
I think Nicole Milan running for mayor and prime minister could be taken more seriously than, if I'm being honest.
Perhaps. No, I'm not really entertaining that it's gonna happen realistically. But is there like a chance he gets elected to parliament?
No,
It's ridiculous.
no. It's like the chance that Jeremy Clarkson would have if he runs.
No, I think.
No,
Jeremy
I think Clarkson has
would
much
win.
more of a chance to.
Do you guys think Clarkson has a chance?
Because I think he's
Yes.
much more loved than
He is
Tate-
loved,
Tate.
but I don't think he'd be. Really?
Let's be
I-
honest.
okay.
It depends where you're running. Go.
Plus, Clarkson is being rather political as of late with the whole farmers debate and then taxation.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, but he just
He's not
he-
going to run, obviously. But
No,
like,
obviously.
but I think, put it this way: if both him and Tate run, I think it's much more likely that Clarkson is the one.
Oh, out of the two, yes, but
wins that.
still, I think. Yeah, I like Clarkson.
I'd love to see
Clarkson.
Clarkson in the parliament,
love
because I think that would make Parliament even more hilarious.
The interview of him just shutting down
Yeah,
that
with the
BBC,
BBC,
journalist.
Okay, but
I love
here's a question: could Tate even run since he's not British?
No, he is like half British, half American. His
So he
his
does
mother
have
is English.
citizenship. Okay.
His mother is English. Now, from what I know, which is not a lot, but like I believe there's obviously criterias to be able to be prime minister. I'm assuming one of them is age. You have to be a certain age, and you have to be, I assume, English. Now, whether or not you have to be born there or that, I'm not sure. It's different to America.
You don't have to be English. You could be Scottish, I think, and be a prime
Oh,
minister.
sorry, my mistake. British.
From the Parliament website, to stand as a candidate in a UK parliamentary general election, you need to be at least 18 years old and a British citizen, a
Right.
citizen of the Republic of Ireland, a citizen of a Commonwealth country who does not require leave to enter or remain in the UK or has indefinite leave to remain in the UK, and who can be disqualified from standing, members of the police forces, armed forces, civil servants and judges, people who are subject of a bankruptcy restrictions order in England or Wales, or debt relief, people who have been adjudged bankrupt in Northern Ireland, people who have had their estate sequestrated in Scotland. It's quite broad.
That's quite broad.
If he's a British citizen and over 18, technically,
Yeah.
if he's a citizen, he can run.
I mean,
I would love it just because it's entertaining and just
Yeah.
because I don't like the guy.
yeah, it would be so entertaining.
I'd like to.
I mean,
see
let's be honest, the speeches would be good. I think they would be comedic.
would they? Comedic, yes.
No, they would be like stand-up routines. Come on, let's be honest.
Yeah, they would be entertaining.
Yeah,
Like,
that's my point.
It's always entertaining with Britain, though.
Man, I wish we had Clarkson and Tate in the House of Commons.
Clarkson would actually be good.
Clarkson would be amazing.
I hope he doesn't run though for his sake.
No, for let him be on his farm and do his stuff. He's earned that rest after Top Gear. He doesn't need to run for
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's fun for us to speak about,
Because
Yeah, obviously.
it
as
doesn't affect
non-British
us, you know.
citizens.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
imagine being British and your parliament is just a clown show.
It doesn't affect
Nah.
us.
Order. I loved. What was his name? John Burkrow,
The
speaker. Yeah,
I forgot his name.
legendary guy. I loved him. But anyway, we're getting kind of sidetracked.
Sorry, yeah, we digress.
The UK is entertaining. You kind of have to. Now, apart obviously from all that we already mentioned, you had the recent scandal with the gang rapes come out.
Yeah, they're
Which-
still going on.
I can't say I've looked into it that much, but from what I've seen or heard, I mean, it's quite a terrifying situation that people, were getting. Not people were getting. The aggressors were getting reported, yet still, failure of the justice system in the UK and things like that, and the riots, violence, protests. It's just a whole, storm of not violence, but people, clashing together due to whatever's going on. Did you guys look into it more than I did? I hope.
I didn't really look into it that much. I just read some articles about it, and it's just they're still going on now. Even but for example, conservatives just posted a few hours ago that not a few hour, an hour ago that Keir Starmer doesn't think victims of rape gangs deserve answers. So that's just what the conservatives are saying about it. Obviously, I need to see what Labour have posted, but still.
It's not looking good. I mean,
they're not even agreeing on terminology.
No,
like the Conservatives are calling it what it is essentially, which is gang rapes, whilst the Labour are using the word groomer instead of rape.
Yeah.
So I mean, even at that simple point of understanding what the issue is, they just don't want to agree.
Yeah, and it's sad to see because. Realistically, the victims of this are the victims of those, rapes and violence and assaults. So, it's dire for all people involved, and quite frankly, I saw there was this article or report that said that since the year 2000, like there has been like 700,000 cases of not unreported, but not followed up, reports of rape. And I mean, whether it could not be true, it could be less than 700,000, could be more. I don't know.
It still raises eyebrows.
Not only should it raise eyebrows, it should raise public alarm. It should raise public scrutiny, continuous public scrutiny above this, over the government and the administration, the enforcement of laws and things like that. Yet it feels like, you heard about it one day and then the next day it was completely forgotten, and we're talking about the new scandal, whatever the new scandal is today, and, Starmer calling Musk a fascist or whatever the next thing is. Regardless, point is, it's such a storm of issues going on that even the ones that really deserve the attention, they don't get it because it's completely forgotten by the next day. So that could be a result of like the media, and the concept of immediacy. So you have an issue happening, you want to report it immediately, and then you have another issue happening, you want to report it immediately, sensationalism, things like that. Whatever generates the most clicks. How can it's a difficult question, but how can you put a stop to this?
I don't know why Labour are blocking the inquiries for it. I can't understand.
You see, that's the thing, because from a conservative perspective, and I would say I probably share the similar perspective, it's that a lot of these cases, I don't know if it's most or more than 50%, but a lot of these cases do involve Islamic aggressors. Now. Again, it points to no. I'm not trying to say it's Islam the problem. That's not obviously where I'm coming from. But if the Labour Party is refusing to do those investigations, to do that inquiry because they are afraid of getting called Islamophobic, I cannot sympathize at all, not even 1% with that position, because
obviously.
You don't care what background someone's in if they committed something like rape.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Race or ethnicity isn't. Sorry, I hit the table. Race or ethnicity isn't really an issue here. It's just the action that's happening.
Yeah.
Why block the inquiry? Why?
Yeah.
And I have an article here. It is from
quite
the
frankly, that's criminal. I mean, that's criminal in and of itself.
Yeah, I mean, from Philipson here. I have this is the Guardian, so just take it with a pinch of salt. It says Tories push for new grooming inquiry would kill child safety bill. Says Philipson, member of parliament. So it's obviously a clash of terms and a clash of ideologies. I just don't think it's humane to block the inquiries.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in my opinion, there's no political. There's no reason to. I mean, humane, ethically, morally, politically, like, it's not like you're gonna lose votes if you start the inquiry. I mean,
you won't lose votes.
Like, put it like this: if the Labour Party is losing popularity at every second, and the only thing that they should do, morally, ethically, politically, whatever, it doesn't matter, is to start the inquiry, why don't they start the inquiry? I mean, it's nonsensical, I don't understand it.
Why turn a blind eye?
Yeah,
you don't turn a blind eye to this, but we'll never know why.
No, of course.
Directly, we can speculate though, which is what we're doing now.
I mean, I saw recently there was I forgot what his position was. I believe his name was Paul Cummings. I don't know if either of you have heard of him. He used to be in the I don't know if it was the Blair government or the David Cameron government, but he was kind of giving a speech or in an interview. Was it? Can you not find Paul Cummings? Well, I might have the name wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the guy was like some sort of secretary in either the Blair or Cameron administration. And he was pointing out, listen, when you see the Prime Minister come out of Downing Street or whatever to give a press conferences, he's got a paper, and that paper is telling him the points that he should say in whatever questions are asked. And listen, the truth is, realistically, what is written there has nothing to do with what has been said behind closed doors, because obviously behind closed doors nobody's allowed in,
Yeah,
and you have no idea what's been said. You have no idea if the topic that you're asking the Prime Minister about has been spoken about at all. And for this guy who was part of an administration to come out and say that openly, publicly, and I mean, obviously a lot of people already assume that, but to have it confirmed, and again, nothing was made of it, no media reported on this. And it makes you again question, okay, well, if the media doesn't report on this, then is the media complicit in basically the incompetencies of the administrations, no matter what administrations they are? And I think that's obvious that the media is often can be complicit in that. I mean, I'm not a big fan of the BBC at all.
I don't think anyone is.
Depends who you ask. I mean, academia tends to like the BBC.
Repeat what you just said, and
I know,
it's quite obvious.
But the truth is, sadly,
Yeah, I get it.
the BBC has a reputation, and a lot of people tend to think, or at least people who don't really follow tend to think the BBC is one of the best of the best. I would definitely argue it's not the case. I mean, you only have to look at one name, which is Jimmy Savile, and you'll know exactly why the BBC should not be trusted, in my opinion. But regardless of that, you just often see in the UK, which is the media is it doesn't really scrutinize government as much as it should.
No.
The political media does, because it's a political game.
Yeah, I mean,
Obviously.
the opposing will always scrutinize.
Yeah, exactly. But when it comes to the BBC, which is, it's not state funded, but it's taxpayer funded, but it's the state who like funnels the money in the BBC, so it still has control, obviously. Then it's quite obvious why it doesn't really scrutinize government properly. And it saddens me, because ultimately, in my opinion, the biggest thing in a democracy is to have a free and informed public. And nowadays, I feel like you get that absolutely nowhere, almost, because all media is commercial. All media is either commercial or political in nature.
And that ties into what I said, what we've said in previous episodes, and what we've said now, that there isn't really a true, perfect democracy.
Absolutely not. I mean,
it's a hard pill to swallow, but it's true.
look, to say there's no perfect democracy is completely reasonable, and even people who are like democracy will tell you that there's no perfect democracy. The problem is when these democratic countries project themselves as being some sort of, like gods amongst men for being, these democratic, free and liberal countries. And again, bring up the example of the UK and Russia in 2018 when it comes to arresting people for things they said on social media, and that completely shatters that idea of, democratic countries are the best countries in the world. I mean, I don't know on how many metrics you can judge the UK on, and you can clearly see that there's downward trends, and the state is not at all doing well. So there's the NHS, for example, it's in shambles, where these countries are supposedly the best of the best, the best systems of government and things like that. And I think we've built that paradigm where that's what we believe. Like what the common people believe, at least. But when you look at it deeply, is that really the case? I would probably argue it's not necessarily.
I think, and this is a digression from us, but I think it's maybe the best way forward now that we have now.
Or the best we found yet so far.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I say now.
I
It's the
understand.
best thing.
I understand
probably
that. Completely understand.
From
it,
our
but
perspective.
I would say not necessarily. You're definitely right, but
Thank you.
It's not just that they're the best we found so far. I think the issue is that they were much better simply like 10, 20 years ago.
I think you went too soon. If you go further back, I think they were better, definitely. But 10, 20 years ago, I don't know if they were better than now.
I mean, obviously, I'm
Yeah, I know.
an example, but yeah. When you look at it, I mean, so many of the crises. I mean, don't get me wrong, they had crises obviously 50 years ago, 40 years ago. Doesn't matter, but they
Different
were
crisis.
dealt with much better, clearly, than any
it-
crisis nowadays
It
is.
was different time though as well, so I have to keep that in mind. Obviously,
Yeah.
obviously, I have to say that but in hindsight, it's always different.
So what changed? Is it social media maybe? Is it other factors? I mean,
A big factor would be media. It is media, definitely. Social media and just the internet in general.
put it this
you
way,
know?
I think there's massively increased scrutiny of government because obviously people can see things much more directly than simply through like different media houses.
Yeah, but it's
So,
also
you know.
increased indoctrination as well. Indoctrination.
Yes, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, because obviously, and it always depends on polarity in politics as well, especially in the UK. Depends on where you're from in the UK itself as well. Even in Malta, it's the same thing. But for the UK, especially, it's if you're born in Wales, you think one way. If you're born in Ireland, Northern Ireland, you think a whole different way. Rather than you're born in England or Scotland, And obviously with Wales, it's different because they don't really have their own government like Scotland. Scotland have their own part. Wales, they just have a house of, I forgot what it's called, but they don't.
House
they
of
can't really.
Wales.
Huh?
That was a joke. Stupid joke, but a joke.
I forgot what it's called. But they don't really. Scotland have more representation than Wales.
It should be called House of the Dragon, shouldn't it?
So
because of the flag.
because
Yeah.
of the series as well.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
what he's
But,
saying.
yeah, but
The cool
Stupid
flag.
fun.
I thought it would be funnier, guys.
Stupid
Come on.
fun. No.
No,
Yeah.
tough crowd. Sorry.
Way to kill my ego. Huh?
Say it again.
No, I'm not. Anyway. No, obviously the UK is a unique country because of unique countries.
Unique
technically.
state.
Yes. Because obviously it incorporates England, Scotland, Northern Ireland, and Wales. How? Well, I guess you can't really explain it by comparing it to other similar states because there isn't really similar states. I guess maybe you can make the argument that it's kind of similar to the US in a sense, but obviously
No, I think
it's
that
not similar politically.
The state which is most similar, I think, would be Spain,
Would it be?
due to
I know nothing
Catalan-
about Spain.
the
the
Catalans,
Catalonia.
the Leonese, the Galicians. I mean,
Yes, but
they all have their own languages.
but
They're
it's
their own
different, though.
it's different
people.
because I don't think
It's
like the
different.
Catalonians have their own like parliament and government like the Scots do.
They do.
They do.
do?
They do.
It's different because Spain is a unitary state, but it's technically de facto, not de jure, right?
Yeah, it's
De facto federation,
it's
a
de
de facto
facto
federation.
Mm.
Yeah.
Because Catalans think that they want their own independence, and then obviously the Spanish, the main and in Spanish even the Galicians is the same, and the Spanish. This is a digression. I'm sorry, but they all want their own independence, but then other parts of Spain they just want the whole country.
Mm-hmm.
Even if, for example, if you go to Barcelona, which is part of Catalonia, the capital of Catalonia, for example, and you go to any museum or whatever, there's the museum for Picasso there. On the paintings, on the names of the paintings, the first language you see is Catalan.
Yeah.
Spanish is underneath it.
Yeah.
And that's everywhere in Catalonia.
Oh, that's I'm aware of.
That's why
You know.
I think it's more maybe similar. It is similar, yes, but I don't think we can really measure, especially because Spain are very quote unquote left wing.
So
as a state.
could the UK have like a similar a system a bit more similar to like the US system where the subject territories are states?
I think I think the best outcome, the best way to move forward is, and this is biased as well, STV, the single transferable vote system
Yeah.
for it.
Would
Like we
solve
have
a
in
lot
Malta.
of problems, yeah, probably.
It's not the best, but I think in terms of vote inheritance and just actual representation, I think it's. And this is again, I say this. I look directly to the camera here. I am obviously biased. I'm Maltese, and in Malta we do use the single transferable vote system. But I think it's the best way forward, in my opinion. I could be terribly mistaken. It could not make
I mean,
sense. at all.
I see where you're coming from, and I kind of agree with you. At least put it this way: can it be worse than first past the post?
No, obviously not.
Can't really.
Yeah.
I mean, you kind of only go up from there.
But then, obviously, with the STV, you'd have the problem of gerrymandering.
Yeah.
And then just brings you back to square one. That's what we say. There's no perfect
It would
democracy.
depend how widespread the gerrymandering would be, I guess.
Yeah, too.
Would be
But
great.
I mean, when we're talking about the constituent countries, I mean, it's not really an issue of the constituencies and first past the post. If you look at something like the Brexit referendum, for instance, you have these issues where Scotland, Northern Ireland, and Wales all voted quite strongly in favor of Remain, but because there are just so much more Englishmen, eventually the English vote, which was primarily in favor of Brexit, won out. So only one of the actual UK countries voted in favor of Brexit, but purely by a population vote,
Yeah.
they won it.
That's the problem with representation as well for Wales, Scots, and Irish people, or Northern Irish people. It's just they're heavily underrepresented. Scotland, like I said, Wales, I couldn't find the name. It's just called the Welsh
That's
government.
exactly why I'm kind of saying, what if they kind of... I mean, obviously, is it going to happen? I don't think so, but I can speculate and hope that maybe perhaps they can move to a similar sort of system like the US, where they all become independent kind of states within one country, like a federation, which is how the United States is.
Yeah, I guess.
Maybe that would be more ideal, I guess.
It's a tough situation because also with the system in general that's in place now, there are, like I said, for Scotland, they do have some say in Scotland, and also in the House of Parliament and House of Commons they have some say as well. They have a much lesser say than the Conservatives and the Labour Party. No, Labour have like 400 seats, and they have like, I don't know, 9 seats for Scotland. Wales, they have less. Sinn Féin won 7 and they abstain, so they really have no representation in the House of Commons. It's just a very big problem of representation. There's always problems of representation in general in democracies, especially in this now. Look at
Yeah.
this, it's terrible.
It's like it's probably one of the worst examples that you can...
It's not beneficial, in my opinion at least. I could be wrong. I could be.
No, I don't think you can be wrong on that. It's quite clearly not beneficial. I mean, whether there's things that are better, I think is the argument. But
Yeah, but then what would the solution be? To just dissolve the UK?
maybe let's call up Trump and tell him to buy the UK as
Let's
he wants to
not.
buy Greenland. I don't know.
Yeah, sure.
You know, point being, obviously, I'm being sarcastic.
Yeah.
But it's again, the point is, it's such a dire situation that you kind of need radical change, and realistically, no matter who's in charge or who wins the election, there's not going to be radical change due to the minority government, because there's constant minority government. So when you're if ever you needed to find a situation of an unmoving train, not an unmoving train, an unstoppable train against an unmoving object, this is it. Like there's nothing really that would solve it or fix it.
I don't know if there's really a solution that would. I don't think anyone could be happy with one solution. Someone will be unhappy with any solution provided, if there even needs to be fixing to it, because it's been going strong so far, sort of. So I'm not really sure. I'm quite obviously we can't really say it ourselves because we're not British. It doesn't really affect us directly, at least. Still, legislation is being passed, so that's at least okay.
I do definitely feel some like pain because, not because of my surname.
I was going to say
I'm not going to say that.
Smith.
But ever since I've grown up, I've always kind of had this image of Great Britain in my head, of the UK in my head, where it's like, it's one of those countries that any country aspires to be like, when in reality it's the complete opposite. I know you don't like the UK that much, JP. You don't have to give me a bad...
I love the UK, so I'll balance it out.
All right, well, nice. So you give me heart eyes, you give me angry eyes. We'll do that. But yeah, it is kind of saddening, because in my mind I always thought, the British, and studying history and things like, they were such a big and large empire, great empire, and and before anyone calls me out on the colonization and things, I know. But, we're talking about historically, were they a great empire? If you say no, you haven't studied, quite frankly. But point is, again, the downfall of the UK, not just obviously in the last few years, but since World War One. I mean, you've had probably the largest downfall of any country, period. I would say. I mean, you go from an empire of that size to a country that can barely, scrape by.
I wouldn't say barely scrape by now. That's a stretch.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, fair enough. It is a stretch, but point is still.
Yeah, when compared, but again, different times. The world was much less developed then.
Yeah, but you haven't seen a downfall like the UK's.
Yeah, fair enough.
I wouldn't
The
say
British
much
Empire.
less developed. I mean, the British Empire started existing in the 60s. It's not much less developed.
No, but they still lost so much of their own,
No, I'm saying at the time when the empire was great, the rest of the world wasn't as developed as it is today. Is what I'm saying. He's processing.
I still wouldn't agree.
Why?
Because it's not like the British Empire was some far off, in the 1800s. No, it ended fairly recently.
No,
in the
yeah,
60s.
but
That's the point.
This is the
Was
the crucial point. Yeah.
Was Asia as developed in the 60s as it is now? No.
Well, I mean, the entire British Empire was considered to be over when they ceded Hong Kong to China. Yes, China was absolutely in advanced process of industrialization.
Not as come on, not as it was. Please back me up if you.
No, please keep going. I will back you up if I need to.
Because it wasn't as developed now.
Well,
how
I would be worried if the Chinese did not develop further since the 60s, but
Yes,
still.
they have developed, but the rate in the last 20 years compared to the 20 years before that, it just skyrocketed.
Yeah.
It wasn't as developed, definitely not. Even in Africa. Now, Africa isn't as developed, at least Central Africa isn't as developed as China, for example, but it's still developed more in recent years. And since the empire leaving as well.
Yeah.
The world has developed more since then. No?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I agree with you.
All right.
I don't actually get what
I don't.
No,
disagreement
I
was about.
I disagree on a semantic level.
Okay.
When you can say that, the empire was in this time where the world was much less developed. Like, I wouldn't agree with that because, well, the 60s are practically quite modern and contemporary.
No, okay, yeah, but we're talking about relatively. We're talking relatively speaking, so you're not.
And in general, and the time of the empire, from the beginning to the end, at its peak, it was much less. The world was less developed than
Yeah.
nowadays.
Yeah, obviously.
He still doesn't agree with me. So
Well, this is a debate for another time. I feel like because I don't actually even know what the disagreement is about.
me neither.
But anyway, the original point I was making is that it took the British Empire like maximum 100 years to kind of collapse into the situation it's in. That my point is how fast the collapse was. That wasn't my initial point.
Yeah, I mean, lots of countries sought independence in the 60s and 70s.
Yeah. I mean,
More.
that's not technically because when I say collapse, it's not because they just had the revolution everywhere and everyone
No.
overthrew them. But there were certain other priorities came to be, and
The British,
The time for that period ended.
exactly.
the British surrendered their empire for American aid in the war.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the deal they made. Hey, listen,
priorities,
we will
different priorities,
decolonize
yeah.
for aid in the Second World War. So it's not even an issue of revolutions. It's just that the
No.
British chose to end their empire.
Yes. That's exactly it. But at the same time, you see that so many crises have propped up after the period of their empire, obviously. So not only have you seen their empire kind of disappear, but you've seen a lot of crises appear. That is my point, essentially.
And their influence as well, you can mention.
Oh, their
British
influence for
influence.
sure. I mean,
That
because to be
counted.
honest, in my opinion, it's the UK is probably taken as a bit of a joke, to be honest, globally.
I know it's
I
late
mean-
in the episode to mention this, but we also can't ignore a certain class in Britain that still wants the Kansas countries to like merge and work together. So like even that's something which started with the British Empire, and you have a very significant class of people who say, "Hey, listen, our Commonwealth partners come first."
Yeah.
It was one of the reasons for Brexit because they did not want. They would rather work with the Commonwealth partners than with the continent itself.
Yeah. That is a good point. I mean, could you just for our viewers just mention the countries that you mean, because
The Kansas countries would be the UK, Canada, New Zealand, and Australia.
yeah, I didn't ask for me. I knew that, obviously.
Of course.
No, I actually did. Come on. Anyway, but yeah, that it is important to mention because I don't think a lot of people know that about the reasonings for why people voted for Brexit, so it is important to mention. But at the same time, yeah, things like that also bring to perspective. Okay, there's so many things that they could have done to help themselves ultimately, but we kind of see, again, such an incompetent administration, whichever administration you want to mention, man, none of them, in my opinion, were at all competent. So
I do have hope though for Britain in the future. Especially,
yeah, well,
not
I
in
guess
the near future.
put it this way, any country will bounce back from any crisis eventually, unless
Yeah.
they collapse. So realistically, we're just waiting. But how long it will take, nobody knows, and it will take much longer even to rebuild their own reputation on an international level. Because,
Yeah.
again, for example, the fact that they're a permanent, they are a permanent member of the UN Security Council,
I
right?
believe.
I mean, for example, the conversation as to whether they should stay a permanent member, for example, I think is coming soon. At some point, it's gonna come, because how long can they keep up this kind of downward trend in performance of when it comes to so many different metrics? That how long will it take for that conversation to come up?
I mean, I'd
You know?
argue that currently Britain is. Well, I might be exaggerating here, but I do think that Britain as a country is currently like geopolitically irrelevant.
Yeah.
Irrelevant. Irrelevant.
Irrelevant,
Or
irrelevant.
Okay, sorry.
I mean, the most relevant thing I've seen come out of Britain was when Keir Starmer sent Labour Party supporters to support Kamala Harris in her campaign.
Yeah.
That is not. That's not what Britain should be doing as a country who
And,
is part of the permanent
Not
UN
only
Security
that,
Council.
but traditionally Britain has. Okay, wait.
No,
No, I'm not gonna say that, actually.
I know. I think I know
Never
what you
mind.
were going to say, but no.
I only was gonna say that because we always used to get, we were always taught in history like Britain was an isolationist country, which it is, yes.
Yeah,
but
splendid isolation.
what I was gonna say would not have been the same thing, so I'm not gonna say it. Would have been completely wrong. But point is, it makes me go speechless. It really does make me go speechless because it's almost hopeless. But hopefully someone comes out. Maybe an Andrew Tate comes in.
No,
and-
please, no, please. No.
No, that's fun. No, absolutely not.
No? Okay.
No,
Absolutely
You're on
not.
your own. You're on your own.
No. Okay.
He gets one vote from one constituency.
It will be you doing voter fraud.
No, it would be Watford or something. I don't know. Anyway, I think we've had our fun today,
Yeah.
much more than usual. But so thank you for listening. Obviously, we spoke about the UK. That was episode 8,
Yes.
right? And we'll see you next week for episode 9. We're gonna have a special guest.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a terrific task ahead of us. We have a shattered world around us, and we must help to rebuild it.
Сегодня еще раз обращаюсь ко всем гражданам России.
The President of the United States.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.